The sequence in the Everglades was quite an exciting sequence, and we had a lot of boats, and they were traveling at very, very high speeds. We had an American stunt crew that were driving these boats, but in actual fact, I call them a stunt crew, but they were really boat handlers, and some of them had never been involved in stunts for films. They were just good at handling these boats.
We had to make a little run-up, so when the boat chase is on, there's a wedding going on, and we'd put marquees up, the cake was there, and we'd now made the track of where we wanted this particular boat to go. And we had our second driver, who was doubling for Roger, and he came being followed. He came up the bank exactly where we expected him to come, went sliding across the garden, but on the opposite side there were about 4 or 5 cypress trees, and he should have gone between them, but he didn't. He went bang, and the whole side of the boat was wiped out.
I was angry with the stunt driver for having hit the tree, because the boat was now kaput and we had to get the spare boat out, and there was no boat to take me home.
Ah, there you are, 007.
Balls, Q.
Bolus, 007. Good. Have that ready for Army Day.
Yes, sir.
Well, now, Roger and I have been very old friends. I mean, I first worked with him on Ivanhoe, so it shows how long I've known him. And he knew this perfectly well. And he used to just sit there or stand there when I had my close-up. Well, look, you're not going to get this, are you? And, I mean, it really was. He was, as you know, a great joker. And, I mean, sometimes I'd get like that, and I'd see Roger standing there, and he'd hold up a thing with bollocks written on it. And so that was, you know, quite difficult to remember my lines.
Now, pay attention, please. Windscreen bulletproof, as are the side and the rear windows. Revolving number plates, naturally. Valid all countries.
I haven't got a clue what I'm talking about, so I had to learn it, rather like a parrot. And Sean used to fidget in the character with the gadgets. And, of course, that made me suddenly, for heaven's sake, stop it, I can't remember my lines. So, I mean, a lot of the sort of aggro, whatever you like to call it, is really because I can't remember my lines. And that, I think, helped very much.
Ingenious and useful, too. Allow a man to stop off for a quick one en route.
It has not been perfected out of years of patient research entirely for that purpose, 007.
Q's department, of course, he was the man that was supposedly responsible for all the gadgets, which actually we came up with the gadgets, obviously. In fact, Desmond, he'll tell you he couldn't knock a nail in the wall. He's not gadget-minded at all, but a darn good actor. So we go through very thoroughly and explain to him exactly what the gadgets did, and quite often the script was written on the day we shot it, when it came to sort of things like that. But he was marvellous. I mean, he could pick it up straight away, and of course, Q is Q, and totally convinced everybody.
I think a lot of the gadgets are, as I say, prototypes. And what you are seeing is what the inventors of the gadgets would really like it to look like when it's finished. And perhaps 10, 15 years' time, they do use them. I mean, for instance, there's this one here, which is the bleeper, which was used in Russia with Love.
Excuse me.
What?
Give me my shirt, will you?
What's going on?
I have to make a phone call.
When Thunderball was made, there was no such thing as a small underwater camera. And it was used in the film, and I believe that this is the prototype of the very small Nokomis today. But this was, so I understand, the first underwater camera. So that, I mean, there are so many things of these gadgets. And I believe, for instance, for the underwater car, that what happens is that they hear that a gadget or a car or whatever is wanted for a Bond film. Well, of course, you can't get into Pinewood for cars. I mean, everybody goes down there and say, oh, please use my car. And, of course, they picked the Lotus.
The Lotus really did adapt, as you can see, nicely into an underwater car. And then, of course, the problem was, how are we going to make it? How are we going to actually shoot this sequence using an underwater car? And also, we had to have this effect where the car transforms from a road car into a submersible. And the sequence, although it only took something like 30 seconds in the film, we had 7 full-size body shells that were given to us by Lotus and 3 miniatures to actually achieve that effect. We used a full-size road car which drove onto the jetty, so it had to be timed as the helicopter came down beside the car. It fired at the car and you saw all the things exploding. The next shot we used a miniature which we shot in the Bahamas, and I rolled it down a ramp. That was one of the miniatures, and the other miniature was used when it was going towards, it had to go behind a rock, and we couldn't find any rocks big enough to actually hide the full-size Lotus. The Lotus car couldn't go behind any rocks because there was nothing in that particular area that was big enough for the car to go behind, so we had to use a miniature. Other than that, all the sequences were done with the wet submersible and the full-size cars that transformed.
I think that was a great sequence. I mean, I think that the special effects were quite magnificent on that. The way the car, where you see the car actually change into a feasible thing that could operate underwater.
And of course there was the other car too when it came out of on the beach, and that was a dummy car which was towed out, but the contraption under the sand, as it travelled and cut a groove in the sand for the mechanism to work, we had a brush, just an ordinary sweeping brush on the back, so it actually filled in the crack as it passed.
Do I remember the first gadget? I think it was something like a magnet on a watch or something that I pulled the zip of Madeline Smith's dress down. I've been trying to get a gadget like that since.
It really turned out to be quite a simple effect in the end, but it was something that when you read it in the script, you know, you start to work out complicated ways of doing it. I think at that particular time, to see that it did work, I got one of the boys to put the dress on, and we tried it that way, so that we had a good idea it was going to work.
I had a horrendous, very old-fashioned bra was put on my rather copious bosom. I remember that I was a double D at least at the time. I don't know why or where it came from, but anyway, there were these terrible things jutting out from which I wished to be dissociated. And so I was, this appalling bra was bought for me, and the material was actually swathed over the top of it and fitted round me, exactly like a glove, like a kid glove. I couldn't move or breathe in this very horrendous item. And consequently, the zip was sort of installed, if you like, with very little of me, very little room for manoeuvre. Do you understand what I'm talking about?
I told her that I would have to have my hand up her skirt, and she didn't seem to object. And she said, well, it's fine, you know. And I told her why, that I would have to be pulling the skirt so that when I pulled the zip on the wire, that it wouldn't sort of ruckle up and stop the zip from coming undone.
Maddie is in a romantic clinch with James Bond. What you don't see is that under her skirt, at the bottom there, is Derek Meddings, and his assistant is on a ladder at the other end above her, holding the tension on a piece of fish wire that is pulling the zipper down. And as all this is going on, I'm saying, you know, squeeze her tighter, Roger, slower with the zip. I could see your head, Derek. Get under a skirt more.
There was obviously a lot of bawdy comments went on, but I don't engage in bawdy humour, as you know.